But it's my absolute privilege to be seated on the same sofa as my teacher, Prof.Ananthakrishnan. And Ananthakrishnan is one of the pioneering academicians and surgeon par excellence, and is a professor and a teacher in JIPMER Pondicherry for over 3 decades, maybe 30 batches.
Yeah, 30 years.
30 batches, and all the students who've gone through JIPMER fondly remember him as one of the great teachers of surgery, and because of him, many of us taken up surgery as a career. It's a pleasure to be seated with you, sir. And I thought I'll have a chit chat with you, and I just want to find out what made Prof.Ananthakrishnan what he is today. If I can start off, like you belong to which part of Tamil Nadu? Where did you do your schooling?
You see, my father was in the army, so my schooling was all over India. Every 2 or 3 years he used to be transferred out, and therefore I never had anything like constancy in schooling. The last 2 years of my high school, he was transferred to Chennai, and I did in those days there was no plus 2, it was up to 11th. And I did my 10th and 11th at Prof.N.Ananthakrishnan Boys High School in Vepari. And why there, you may ask, because North India, I was part of the ICSC and then the All India Anglo-Indian High School certificate, and the exams were in November, December, the final. In Chennai, the very few schools were like that. Many of them had the conventional semester where it will finish in April or May. So I joined there and I finished my 11th standard. And at that time I was this is 1961, when I was 15 years old. So not mature enough to know what career. So my father studied at Loyola College. So he put me there. Okay. I did 1 year of pre-university in Loyola College. And then he was a doctor in the army. I actually wanted to do mathematics and physics. But again, that time 16 years, 1 year more. So those days there was no age restriction for joining medicine. So he said, we'll apply. So I applied to Loyola College for continuing in physics with mathematics.
But that must be a PD university, that should be a science biology group. You are eligible for both.
Yeah, because that division had not really come. So I did, and then we applied, and I was called for interview. We were in Pune then. By that time we had been transferred to Pune, and we rushed here by unreserved compartment because there was no reservation for the interview. Those days there was no entrance exam, only an interview. And the allotment of college was made by them. I was allotted to Keelpark Medical College, and very disappointed at first because we thought Madras Medical College was the only thing in town. But later on I decided, and I found actually that it was a blessing in disguise, because we were only 75 and we had some very good teachers, and teachers who interacted with us. That aura of being in Madras Medical College in GH was not there, so interaction was better, and life started like that.
Who impressed you in KMC? Who are the legendary people whom you thought had an impact on you?
Anatomy, we had Dr. T.S. Ranganathan, who later became head in Madras Medical. Extraordinarily good teacher, very good in drawing, very good in explaining. And you see, medicine, explanation makes difference because a lot of facts you have to memorize, but when you find the reason for something, then it's easier to remember. In physiology, we had a professor called Padmanabhan who had just returned from US with a little accent. So naturally, as youngsters, we are attracted to him. We had Dr. CM David in pathology, he had only 3 fingers in one hand. But the way he used to do autopsies, you had to see to believe. Later on, he migrated to New Zealand. And of course, the one that I remember most was Dr. Sarat Chandra, my teacher.
Was he
was my
faculty in
professor.
KMC?
Yeah, he was there in KMC
Really?
throughout my KMC career.
Oh,
Only when I finished, he was transferred to thing.
okay.
So he was I'm sure you have seen him or heard him or interacted with him.
I did.
Man who leaves a lot of impressions on your mind. And what impressed me most about him was his approachability, his friendliness to students, and his tremendous knowledge. And that is when I think I took a firm decision that I want to be in academics.
And research.
And he did not practice. So he was my sort of role model those days. And I said, I have to be like him. I have to be in academics. And I still remember one day he came, he used to take Sunday clinics for all of us. He just came there and then he asked, okay, today what shall we talk about? And one of my classmates wanted to be mischievous. And he said, I think let's talk about the anatomy of the middle ear. And he didn't miss a beat, Sarat Chandra. He just went to the board, all right, come. And he drew the middle ear and he drew the structure of the organs there and he explained to us 1 year the anatomy and physiology of hearing. And in a young mind that was impressionable, you see. And then later on I asked my friend, see what you have let out of the bag. But I think if I have to attribute the reason for joining surgery to any one man, it will be Dr. Sarat Chandra. We had also other good surgeons, Dr. Narayanan, who became later on the Director of Medical Education in Tamil Nadu, Dr. Vasudevan Nambiar, who had just returned from United Kingdom and therefore brought a lot of fresh ideas, Dr. Umapati, who became the professor in Madras Medical College. So surgery department very good. So, but one man, if I have to name one man, it will be Sarat Chandra. And then, but one thing I found, that the atmosphere of the teaching and the learning of medicine in Chennai was conducive to developing a practitioner. It was not very conducive for stimulating an academic life. So, because everybody was oriented towards that, and you are a success if you had a good practice, and if you didn't have practice, you are a failure. And your whole aim in life was to have a clinic and have your own patients. I was into academics, so I didn't apply for post-graduation in Chennai. I did quite well in my final MBBS exams, and I applied to All India Institute. And I got called, and
But why didn't you apply in Chennai? And
because
where did you have the knowledge that you should apply for All India Institute?
I had heard of All India Institute from some of my seniors who had joined there, 1 or 2 of them. And I had heard that it was a good place which would develop in you a lifelong interest in learning. And I knew the atmosphere here, which was essentially, and if you pardon me for saying this, it consisted of waiting at the gates for the boss to come. As soon as he opens his door, you carry his briefcase and walk along with him to his room, and then you will not even address him as you or sir, you will have to call him in third party. So that person, that did not appeal to me. I worked as senior house surgeon in Madras Medical College for 1 year. I found it stifling. So I left, went back to Rayapeta where Sarat Chandra was and worked with him for 1 year after my MBBS, and then I applied. Meanwhile, I passed my ECFMG and I got good marks. But somehow going abroad didn't appeal to me. All of my classmates went, and some of them are...
Why, sir? This is, and it's in India's gain though, but why specifically?
One reason was in matching, I applied and I got matched to a hospital which I was not interested in, Misericordia Fordham Hospital in New York. I wanted to go to Henry Ford at Detroit. So I didn't go. And surprisingly, after my MS, I applied again and I got matched to the same hospital. And by the time I got a job and I came to Pondicherry. So I applied and we were called, and selection was very different. You had to write a 1 hour paper on a long question which I don't remember now what it was, probably Burns. And then you had to go for ward rounds with the consultants. And then at the end there will be an evening round with the whole department and viva voce. And I came and gave it and came back. And 2 weeks later I got notice of selection. And 8 of us were selected. And that's the thing. And I found All India Institute is an entirely different world. That life started there at 7 a.m. I was there for 7 years at Delhi. Life started there at 7 a.m. even in winter. When you'll get up, have breakfast and go. You'll have your 1 hour teaching program up to 8, which will be either a case or a discussion or journal club. Then you go to OPD, and OPD is very busy, or to the operating room depending on what your unit did, or to rounds. You will have lunch, and in the afternoon you will have collective programs in the department, or you will have common programs like grand rounds, which will go on till 4 or 5. Then you go back to the ward and receive all the reports and do whatever dressings and other things. Then they will come for evening rounds, which was throughout 365 day a year program. So attend evening rounds with the consultants, which will finish at 8, and then they'll take you for tea. You go for dinner at 9 and then go to the library and spend a couple of hours there. 7 a.m. to midnight was my working hour at All India Institute for 7 years. So good people, very good, extraordinarily good mentors. I remember I worked with Dr. B.M.L. Kapoor, who developed an interest in gastroenterology in me. He is now consultant at Apollo, and at the age of 80 plus he still operates at Apollo, New Delhi. And Dr. Atam Prakash, who was all India famous. Dr. Manmohan Kapoor was one of the first to start endocrine surgery. I worked with him as senior resident and developed an interest in endocrine surgery. And then the next occurrence which changed my life perhaps, like the interaction with Sarat Chandra, was the arrival of Dr. Nandi at All India Institute. I was a third year postgraduate, and he had just came and joined. 4 assistant professors joined at the same time, and Nandi worked with B.M.L. Kapoor, and it was completely a different environment, because coming from Chennai, we are not used to questioning our teachers. We are not even used to crossing them. We will try to avoid them or bypass them. He was a man who encouraged you to interact with him. And what impressed me most was, of course, his British accent, which we all admired and tried to develop at some point. But what impressed me was his willingness to accept that he did not know. And he'll say frankly, I don't know. You tell me, you find out. Or I'll find out and tell you. And the second is his lack of shyness in getting up in front of an audience and asking doubts which may look fundamental. We'll all have the doubt, but we'll not have the courage to stand up because we'll be afraid of being pointed out as ignorant. And then I got to know him quite well, and his struggles in starting the GI surgery department there. I interacted with him on many occasions after that. Firstly, as a very avid contributor to the National Medical Journal, in that capacity as editor, and then in writing chapters. He is very fond of writing, and I was also very fond of writing. This writing infection caught me in when I was in the second year.
MS General Surgery.
MS General Surgery.
Now, if I can take you back, there is a distinct difference in the work culture in KMC versus All India Institute.
Absolutely.
This hard work and this day and night work and not thinking of food and sleep. How could you adjust to that? How were you? Didn't you find it very difficult in the beginning?
It wasn't difficult because I told you I had decided I wanted to be in academics. I had decided I want to teach surgery. I was not a reluctant teacher throughout my life. I was not forced into teaching. I did it because I liked it. And the atmosphere there, so conducive to learning, because the spirit of inquiry, the spirit of participative learning, the availability of resources. Those days, of course, electronic resources were not there. It meant sitting in the library and actually reading books and journals. And I remember for my dissertation, I had about 150 references. Every one I had to sit and through a big, huge book called the Cumulative Medical Index. It had about 10 volumes per year. And you had to go through and find it, and then go to the racks and identify the things. I just slipped into it. It was never very difficult because I was uncomfortable in the environment at Chennai. So I didn't like this boss and student type of attitude. So it wasn't difficult at all. And when they're prepared to work, it's not as if I was looking for an excuse to go on leave. Throughout my 3 years as I've never taken one day leave, not even one day, and throughout my 3 years as registrar, I've never taken leave. So it's...
Now, I've heard Dr. Nandi say that you don't require to be clever to be successful. It's all sheer hard work. You believe but still I always felt that he all looked for cleverness also. If both are combined, there's nothing like it.
See, if you are uninterested, you have lost the battle. But if you are interested and you don't mind working hard, you can achieve what anybody has achieved. See, there are people who can remember better perhaps. There are people who require an additional reading to remember. They may take a little more time. But you compensate that by working more hours, that's all. I don't think in academics you need to be very extraordinarily clever to get a Nobel Prize, but to be an academician, I think anybody can become.
In addition to Dr. Nandi, who else inspired you on the All Indian Medical Sciences? What is special about some of the teachers?
I'll mention my first boss, Dr. Kapoor. His way of approach was very different. His way of showing his confidence. I still remember I was a second year student. He used to see me in the wards all the time. And but he'll never mention it. You will never have a word of praise. Kya kar rahe ho and all that. Gruff voice. One day in second year, we had posted a carcinoma rectum. That's when I knew what confidence means. He said, if I can quote him in his own words, "Tum shuru karo, main aa raha hu." Start, I am coming. Right? I was second year PG. So I went, I got the student prepared, put him in the lithotomy position, and then started. And then I opened the abdomen, I explored. There was a first year and one intern. They were waiting for Nandi. Then when I had explored everything and all that, I sent a message, we are ready for you. Then he said, you just carry on, I'm coming. Shuru karo, mobilize karo. So then I started mobilizing. And I got involved in that. I mobilized the rectum up to the pelvic floor. And then again I sent one intern was standing there to finish. Now, if he comes and takes over, I'll go and to the perineum. I said, karo, karo. Perineum bhi shuru karo, he said. So after doing the abdomen, I packed everything and things. He never came in till I finished, and as a second year PG. And later on I asked, I know that you are capable and you will call me if there is any trouble. I mean, that sort of confidence, and then you go the extra mile to make sure that you don't let them down. Because you know that man is thing. The same thing, I was very extraordinarily lucky to have very good teachers throughout my career. Sarat Chandra, then B.M.L. Kapoor, Nandi as a sort of, it's like Ekalavya, because I did work in his unit. I saw him from a distance and learnt. But, and then of course Manmohan Kapoor, who taught me the fundamentals of endocrine surgery. So, and then when I came here to JIPMER, after a senior residency, having spent 7 years, I wanted to remain there. So I went and met the then director, Dr. Ramalinga Swami. I had a reputation of being a hard-working resident. He said, sir, I would like to. He said, you go, you got a job, you go, we'll get you back.
But why did you apply for JIPMER?
Because UPSC, I applied to the UPSC.
Okay.
And JIPMER was filled up by UPSC. And they advertised 4 posts.
So before going to JIPMER, were there super specialties in AIIMS? Didn't any super specialty attract you?
They had urology. Dr. Man Singh was in charge. They had neurosurgery with Dr. Prakash Tandon, very famous neurosurgeon, and cardiothoracic with Dr. Gopinath.
Why didn't they interest you?
And I was interested in abdominal surgery. By the time I had worked with B.M.L. Kapoor and had interacted with Nandi, I didn't want to do anything other than abdominal surgery. I also did others because we were in general surgery unit. So we did thyroids and we did breast and this and that. But my focus was GI. There was no GI course anywhere in India at that time when I passed. The first course was started by Dr. Rangabhashyam in mid-80s, and soon after in Sanjay Gandhi by Kaushik. So there was no such course anywhere. So the option was not there. Either I went after my ECFMG or I stayed and worked here. Because once you finish registrarship, there is nothing else to do.
Were you married by that time?
No. I got married 2 years after I joined JIPMER.
Really?
Yes. And I joined JIPMER as a bachelor. So you are asking why I went to JIPMER. Because I applied to UPSC, there were 4 posts. 2 in Delhi, 1 in Goa and 1 in Pondicherry. My aim was to get into Maulana Azad Medical College and get it back into All India Institute. But as luck would have it, some secretary wrote that he knows Tamil and therefore may be sent to Pondicherry. They showed me in the file. So I took 1 year extension because I wanted to finish my senior residency. So I finished my senior residency and then joined. And I never thought when I went there that I'll stay there for long. My aim
Very
was
reluctant to come to.
Yeah, when I went I was reluctant. But my aim was to get back to All India Institute within a year or 2. And when I left JIPMER it was 30 years. And I never regretted a moment of that. Because, and after that I got selected in All India Institute. I didn't join. By the time I had taken roots in JIPMER.
So how was the unit structure in general surgery when you came?
We had 3 units, and Dr. Satyaprakash was professor and head of Unit 1. Dr. Mediratta was Unit 2, who later got transferred to Dr. Maulana Azad Medical College. And Unit 3 had 2 people, so it was 3A and 3B. Dr. Sibbal was Unit 3 and Dr. Chaudhary was Unit 3B. So 3 units and 6 faculty. There was no speciality when I joined. After I joined, urology started. Dr. Bandari came and started. Then thoracic surgery started. And then pediatric surgery started with Dr. Chatterjee. So,
Sir, not just you've been a fine teacher, but you're a wonderful surgeon. Where did you had enough of cutting or in All India Institute, or what made you a fine surgeon?
I think there's no other way of learning surgery except by seeing and doing. First you have to know, and therefore you have to read about it, see how people do and then doing it. And we had such a tremendous workload at All India Institute that everybody, if you are regular and this thing, you will get enough and more surgery to do of all types, even as a PG. This was a huge difference from Chandigarh. The culture was that as a PG you don't get to do any surgery, you only assist. Yes. I remember even senior residents who joined us from PGI, they could not do anything. Now, one of my colleagues joined from PGI, and when he came, he couldn't do a hernia. He had to start from there. All India Institute, it was fair game. Secondly, as a registrar, you are all in all. You call your boss only when you need or when politicians come. Otherwise, you do what thing and you are only answerable to them. And you have to teach a lot of juniors. And one of the people who is my lifelong friend is Dr. Chattopadhyay, who joined as PG the year I became registrar. So our interaction goes back from 74. So you get so much to do and so much theoretical background and so many visiting professors and so many lectures. You have to try very, very hard in order to be not good at your work. It is just culture. And JIPMER was equally busy. We had 3 consultants, 6 PGs when I joined. So 2 PGs, 1 intern, and that was the unit. And the daily OPD at that time was 250, 300. Now it's closer to 400, 500. And the number of operations per day, anywhere between 7 and 10, majors and minors. 2 adjacent tables, twice in a week. So it is like learning to swim because you have to swim.
Was the surgical culture different in JIPMER as compared to All India Institute? Did you find anything different, or it's a similar culture?
Principles were same, but what I found in JIPMER, which I did not find in All India Institute, was the inter-faculty relationship was much better, both within the department and outside. There was no rivalry, no jealousy, no competition, no backbiting, no talking behind someone's back. It's a tremendous atmosphere. Secondly, and again I owe this to Dr. Satyaprakash, a man of very innovative ideas. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But a man of innovative ideas who made you think original. I learnt a lot of plastic surgery from him, which I later on in my life applied to my area of interest in corrosive strictures, myocutaneous flaps, retroperitoneal rectopexy for prolapse, facial reconstruction after cancer surgery. So it was lucky that I was with him. The others did, but they did the routine stuff. He did this, and he had a lot of ideas, and he encouraged you to not do it if you don't like. That is another great thing. So if I felt that what he was doing was not, I don't approve of it, he'll never compel me.
Now, did you have, if anybody who's bright and brilliant, is not generally liked by the bosses and they just want to...
No,
did
I
you
never,
ever face anything of that nature?
nobody has ever told me I am bright and brilliant. So I worked hard because, as I told you, I was not married. So in the initial years also in JIPMER, I worked almost like All India Institute. So that is not the issue. I have never felt that...
There's no sort of, nobody's trying to put you down.
I never felt that in the departmental I left. Later on, I spent 30 years in the department, out of which 16 years I was head. And I never felt any conflict at any time.
Did you find any difference between the students of All India Institute, MBBS, and the students of JIPMER Pondicherry?
If you are asking that time, there was no difference. Here also we had a very motivated small group, 65 undergraduates, which later became 75, till I left. And we had 6 PGs, which later on became 8. Throughout my period it was only 8. Very motivated, very interested in learning, and my pride is that when I completed 50 years of surgery, all the students gathered in the college where I work now, and some of them are so outstanding in their achievements. It's a matter of thing. Dr. Ravindra, who's a transplant surgeon in US, Dr. Srinath, Dr. Kalerasan, who's a faculty member, Dr. Sendil Kumar at the Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences, and all of them have doing gastroenterology, which I felt that they are not, they are pursuing the interests that our unit had at that time. And at last count, about 40 to 50 of students whom have done MS with me are in gastroenterology. We met in Hyderabad during the meeting. Some of them are abroad, Sajjal Roy and all that. So it's, but now there's a lot of difference. I'll tell you what's the difference. When I joined, MS was the end. You joined because you wanted to do MS and you wanted to become a surgeon. Now, there are 2 things which happen. MS is means to the next step. They come there thinking of what next to do after MS. So their focus is not on MS. There's just 3 years that you have to spend in order to be eligible to do whatever you want later on. And the second thing which has happened, unfortunately, is that people who come into MS are not all motivated. They join because it's all in private money. If you have wealth, you get a seat. So they come because they have money, there's a seat, and they know that if they spend enough time, they'll pass. Because these days, you have to work very, very, very hard in order to fail. That is how the exams have become. So it changes, but sometimes you wonder whether we are doing the right thing, because we are letting people go who are half-baked. But that is the situation now, because now JIPMER had 8 seats, I told you. Now they have 20 seats. 60 students in doing MS in JIPMER at any one time.
60.
60. We had a teaching hall called Dialogue Theatre. Cannot hold them because it doesn't have so many seats. And we have 150 undergraduates. In our college we have 250 undergraduates. In every batch there are 40 students. So
Now, unlike many others, you branched into research heavily and publications heavily, and you found time for what is that to draw you into those? You could have taken life
Again,
easy.
it was the spark at All India Institute. My dissertation was crystallographic studies of gallstones. You know, gallstones are very common in the north. And that interest in crystallography was started by Dr. Balakrishna Rao, who was then head. So I did that. And we had full access to all the equipments in biophysics department at any time of the night or day. And we had to take the stones, we had to powder them, take samples from each layer and put them in the camera and expose them for 4 to 6 hours. So I had to sit there in the night because after working hours. And then Kapoor was also one who always promoted publication. But his was not lab-based research but case-based research. And then Satya Prakash, I told you, innovative in his ideas and so many new concepts, and he never had the time to write, so I used to write for him. And then later on, of course, I got interested in corrosive strictures because there are so many of them, and a lot of the patients that were being operated had loss of conduit and necrosis, and also that became a lifelong interest. And then when you get into that, you realize there are special situations like pharyngeal strictures which don't do well, then you start thinking about them and all that. And the last part of my career, that time the Helicobacter came, so I got interested in that. And we worked 20 years, and one of my very closest friends and colleagues, Dr. Vikram Kate, joined my unit at that time. 20 years we worked, published about 30-40 papers on Helicobacter. It just, environment gave the topics and we were just floating along. But one thing is, if you get interested in writing, it's like an infection, it never leaves you. So it was not at the expense of clinical work, but it was in addition to that. We found time and we found that thing. And after some time, and I'm very glad to say that many of the people whom worked with me have now developed that same interest. Dr. Nandakishore, Dr. Kalayaras, and they can write excellently well, and much better than I can do it in their stage or I can do now. So it's just, if you have the proper environment and you have the ability and you have the interest to go and look for evidence, it will come automatically.
When did you get married and how did it happen?
Arranged marriage,
Uh-huh.
79.
This is
My-
the year we joined actually.
I joined 2 years before, 77. My wife had done pediatrics, she had done diploma then. So just parental contact, and then we met each other for about 15 minutes before our wedding. And then she did, after our wedding, we had twins 1 year later. So first few years very difficult. And then she did her MS when our children were very young. So, but she is also interested in academics, and Pondicherry is a small town, not much to do beyond working hours. So you don't have distractions. If you are interested, you can still continue to study and still continue to look after your family and do your publication. There is no difficulty. I never found any conflict.
We all knew that you take post-op rounds, evening rounds, night rounds, which many, you religiously used to do that.
Always. As long as I was there, I did it every day.
Mm-hmm. And
We had admission day rounds on admission day. Then the next day was rounds day. Morning I had taken, so I normally I take evening PG classes on that day. Then post-op days I take post-op rounds. So cycle goes on like that.
Now, what do you do at home? You get up early, do some academic work, or after you go back home, you do some. You have, do you have any social life at all out of surgery? Anything else? I thought you played tennis a little bit.
I played, in my college days, I played cricket and tennis, both for my college and the university. So I reached some standards. When I came into medicine, there was no time. So I used to play tennis only occasionally. Even when I was in JIPMER 30 years, we used to play tennis in the staff courts. But not competitive, but regular tennis. Other things, you know, Pondicherry, if you had been in Pondicherry of the 70s and 80s, it's a sleepy town. There's not much of entertainment or things to do or go out and eat and all that. There's only one hotel, Aristo, and this thing. All the other hotels came later on, and the entire stretch from JIPMER to town was rice fields. To an area called Pondicherry, it was all rice fields on either side. So what will you do after? You go home, spend some time with your family, then you go back to library and sit. And then you get all these dissertations to correct and papers to correct and all that. So you do that. My only exercise later on was jogging, and I was a religious jogger. So 4 or 5 miles a day till my knees became bad. So there was no need. I never felt the need, and I don't know whether I missed anything, but even today I don't feel I missed anything.
Do you think that you had a very sort of fruitful life in JIPMER?
Yes, JIPMER, I have no doubts about that. I think I learned 90% of my surgery in JIPMER.
Now they say that Dr. Ananthakrishnan is a very aloof person. He keeps to himself, not very communicative. Is that so, sir?
Actually, inherently little shy. But I am very close to students also because I was part of all their activities. I was staff advisor for 3 years. And I used to be in their basketball and all these things. I was part of Spandan organization for several years. Somehow I have a reputation of being strict. That's why throughout my career I have been addressed as AK-47 by my students. So I know they call me that. I wish sometimes they'll give me a later model, but whenever I meet them,
we are always scared of you.
So
We are always, because others, Dr. Smiles used to take me easy, and you're just the opposite.
I just look like that because I like to interact with students. I like to interact. I was part of the staff cricket team. In fact, the students wanted me to play for the students' team as a wicket keeper. So I said that time it was too late. I was 40s those days. It's just, I don't know, maybe something in my face which makes me look aloof.
What is your relationship with Dr. Smiles?
Very good, very good, very good. We are thick friends. We know each other from 77. Whenever I have an ailment or any problem, I ask him, and whenever he has any illness in his family, he comes to me. And we have a complete faith in each other's ability. And recently, I remember once he had an issue. And I asked him, do you think you want me to manage that? If you want to go somewhere, I'll come with you and we'll go to Madras. I said, no, you have to do it. That confidence he had. And so we are thick friends.
Now, most people, I presume, want to take life easy after retirement, in the sense that, okay, I've done enough and I'll sit back and relax. What have you done after your retirement?
I am not retired really, because I think I told you this yesterday. My philosophy is we are like car batteries, and that I have helped to them. Unless you keep on running them, they lose charge. Then they are of no use to anybody. The more you run, the better, the higher the charge in the battery. It will start immediately. So as long as, and I am convinced that the moment I stop working, I'll become sick. So I don't allow myself to think about that. And it so happened that after retirement, I went into a bit of administration. I was Dean Research. So we are able to motivate a private university towards research. They had 17 publications when I joined, and I took charge of research. When I left research, being in charge of Dean Research, they had 4,000 publications, the university. So motivation helps a lot. And now I'm Dean of Faculty doing some administrative job, this thing. I have my postgraduates. I have attachment to unit, although I'm not a unit head. I have patients who come to me sometimes from distant places because of they've heard that I'm interested in corrosives. I get patients from Bangladesh, Nepal, all places, this thing. I think one can't really say you are retired unless you have an alternate area of interest, and somehow I never developed. I read, but I can read even while working. I have no interest, or nor am I good in music, so I cannot say I'll spend my time listening to music. So what will I do if I don't work? So, and it gives me a chance to interact with students, although these days very difficult because, as I told you, students are little not that motivated. It's very difficult to make them understand the importance of getting your fundamentals correct.
Now, you have very special interest in training the trainers.
Yeah.
And you're one of the pioneers in that area,
Yeah.
national teacher
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
And also that you are very unique in the sense that you revise syllabuses, you create, you worked hard on the syllabus for the national board as well as MCH surgical
Yes.
gastroenterology. What sort of fuels you in that direction?
Again, it was JIPMER, because JIPMER had, what is called the National Teacher Training Center. So the first one in the country. 76 it was started, year before I joined. And all faculty used to be sent there for training. Since none of the seniors was interested, I got pushed into it by my department. 1 year after I joined in 78, nobody wanted to go. So he said, go. And I spent 10 days, and it changes your attitude towards learning. And then the next year I joined as faculty, and I was faculty of the Teachers Training Center for 25 years. And 50 national courses, 2 in a year, and over 2,500 teachers we trained, and a lot of postgraduate workshops and all that. We wrote a book on medical education, which is the first in the country, and another trainer's manual, which was the first in the country. And then recently I wrote a book about how to write a postgraduate dissertation for students in our country, step-by-step approach. So that NTTC was what thing got me interested in pedagogy. The surgical gastroenterology is a small group, and since I am one of the founder members, I know practically everybody there. So in 1999 we had a conference in JIPMER, the Indian Association of Surgical Gastro, and I convinced my friends there that none of the MCH courses has a formal curriculum. So let us sit down and make a curriculum. We have got the NTTC here. I can get other people to help. And we got people from all the training institutes, including Piyush and Nandi and everybody else, Chattopadhyay. And we had a full day workshop, and we prepared the first formal MCH curriculum. A small book, 30 pages. National board adopted it immediately, and they used it for DNB training. Now it became 20 years. So now again I motivated the association to revise it. And you'll be glad to know, last 1 year we've been working on it. We have completed, now it has grown from 30 to 85 pages. And we'll be discussing it next month in Hyderabad at the annual conference we have in the institute there. And this October, when we have the annual conference of IASG, we will be presenting it to the general body. So that will again be we made the curriculum for MS. See, sometimes in life you don't actually go out looking for things. You go to a place where things exist and you become part of it, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes willingly, and life takes a turn. I view that in that context, you see. I don't think that I have promoted myself as an education. I just happened to go there, nobody was interested, I was sent. I got interested. So that is the thing.
So the dreams you had as an undergraduate student in KMC, had they all come true?
Everyone. I cannot say today that I have not done what I wanted to do. I have no regrets for doing what I have done in my professional life. I have regrets maybe in personal life somewhere, this, that and all that. I have absolutely no regrets in professional life.
Wonderful talking to you, sir. I hope you will give us one more chance some other day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the time.